The email landed in my inbox halfway through the fundraising gala I had spent 6 months planning. I was standing near the ballroom entrance at the Lakeview Harbor Hotel, watching donors in evening gowns and tailored suits glide past under crystal chandeliers. The string quartet played an elegant piece. Servers moved like clockwork with trays of champagne. Guests greeted one another with perfect smiles. In the middle of that polished scene, my phone vibrated in my clutch. A notification banner appeared across the top of the screen. It showed the sender, Evelyn Shaw, Chief Executive Officer of Brightbridge Futures, my boss, my former mentor, the woman I had followed for 16 years. The subject line was simple: termination, effective immediately. My thumb pressed the message open before my brain caught up. Megan, effective at the close of this event, your position as Director of Programs is terminated. The board and I have reviewed the irregularities in our scholarship accounts. As the person with direct oversight, you are responsible. Human Resources will follow up on Monday with severance details and instructions regarding access. For the good of the organization, I expect you to leave quietly after the gala and refrain from contact with donors or staff. Evelyn. I felt my heart slam once in my chest. The ballroom lights seemed to sharpen. Then everything inside me went very still. A donor approached me at that exact moment. He was one of our largest supporters. He asked if I could introduce him to the university president who had just arrived. I smiled. I adjusted the strap of my navy gown. I led him through the crowd with steady steps. My voice did not shake. I had known this email was coming. Not the exact timing, not the cruel formality of sending it during the very event I had orchestrated, but the shape of it, the intent behind it. That part I had sensed for months. Across the room, I saw Evelyn standing at our main table. Her silver dress caught the light. She had the kind of perfect short haircut that always looked newly styled. Her laugh floated above the music as she spoke with two board members and the chair of our finance committee. Her hand rested on the arm of a young woman in a sleek black dress. Tara, our shiny new director of innovation, 26, brilliant on social media, always ready with a bright idea for engagement campaigns. The board loved her energy. Evelyn adored her. I watched as Evelyn leaned in to whisper something to Tara. They both glanced toward where I stood by the donor. Evelyn's eyes met mine across the sea of people. She smiled. The smile did not reach her eyes. My name is Megan Carter. I am 42 years old. For 16 years, I poured everything I had into Brightbridge Futures. Our nonprofit helped first-generation students from Chicago neighborhoods get to college and stay there. I had built our scholarship program from a messy spreadsheet into a network of hundreds of students across the country. And now my boss had just fired me in the middle of my own gala by email. I slid my phone back into my clutch. I took a slow breath. I reminded myself of the 3 folders sitting in my home office, the digital backups stored in password-protected cloud drives that did not belong to Brightbridge. Evelyn thought she was ending my story tonight. She had no idea that I had already written the next chapter, long before the termination email. There was the elevator ride where everything changed. It happened one gray Monday morning in January. I stood in the elevator of our office building with a cardboard tray of coffees in my hands. I had picked them up for my team on the way in. The doors slid open onto the 7th floor, where Brightbridge occupied a suite overlooking the river. Evelyn stepped in as I stepped out. She stopped me with a manicured hand on my forearm. She told me that the board had big plans for growth. She told me that donors wanted a fresher image. She said that we needed to look modern and ambitious if we wanted bigger checks. Then she added that she needed me to be flexible during the transition. I told her that I was always ready to adapt for the mission. I meant it. The mission had always been the point for me. Students, families. The first acceptance letters pinned to refrigerators. The phone calls when a student who nearly dropped out made the dean's list instead. Those things mattered. Then she mentioned bringing in new leadership. Weeks later, Tara arrived with her flawless resume and her carefully curated casual style. She was the kind of person who could turn any moment into content. She filmed quick clips in the office. She joked with interns on camera. She moved through our space like she already owned it. At first, I tried to welcome her. I took her to coffee. I explained our relationships with partner schools. I introduced her to long-time donors. A part of me liked her. She was quick and genuinely excited about students. But small things began to shift. I stopped receiving invitations to certain board subcommittee meetings. Tara started presenting at events where I used to speak. Evelyn changed how she introduced me. I had once been the backbone of the organization. Now I was the person who handled details. The first real red flag did not come from office politics. It came from numbers. One evening in early spring, I stayed late at my desk. The cleaning crew had already moved through. The hallway lights were half dimmed. I checked our scholarship disbursement records against bank statements. The numbers did not match. At first it was small, 3 transfers here, 2 odd withdrawals there, a few $1,000s in total. My stomach tightened. I asked our finance associate about it the next day. She looked confused and told me that Evelyn had started approving some transfers directly to speed up urgent situations. She said it in a way that made it sound reasonable. I wanted to believe it. I tried. Over the next 2 months, the discrepancies grew. I found payments to a consulting firm I had never heard of. There were travel expenses coded as donor cultivation that did not match our calendars. Each time I asked questions, the answers became vaguer. Do not worry about it. Evelyn would say that everything was under control. She reminded me that our donors trusted her. She told me that growth required bold moves. I am not naive. I have worked in nonprofit management long enough to know that growth can be messy. Sometimes codes get misapplied, sometimes timing is off. Still, the patterns bothered me. I started documenting quietly. Every month I exported detailed reports from our financial system. I saved copies of emails where Evelyn directed staff to reroute certain expenses. I wrote down the dates of phone calls where things did not feel right. I did not accuse anyone. I did not confront the board. I simply collected facts. Around that time, Evelyn invited me to lunch at a trendy restaurant on the river. She ordered a salad that she barely touched. She spoke about her vision for Brightbridge. She described national expansion. She talked about scaling our model into other cities. Then she told me that I seemed tired. She said that she understood I had taken on a lot. She suggested that I might want to delegate more. Then she said something that made me pause. She called my loyalty both my greatest strength and my biggest weakness. She smiled when she said it. The smile was soft. Her eyes were not. I went back to the office that afternoon with a heavy feeling in my chest. I realized that she no longer saw me as a partner. She saw me as someone who would work herself to exhaustion and never question her. That was when I contacted a lawyer. Her name was Lauren Pierce. She specialized in nonprofit governance and whistleblower protections. I found her through a friend who had once left a chaotic charity job. We met in a small office above a bakery in the West Loop. I arrived with a flash drive and a notebook. Lauren asked precise questions. She looked through my reports and printed emails. She listened while I described Brightbridge, the students we served, and the recent changes. Then she told me that my instincts were right. She could not say exactly what Evelyn was doing without further investigation, but she saw enough red flags in the documentation to take me seriously. She explained the laws that existed to protect employees who reported financial misconduct in charities. She talked about how donors reacted when they learned that their contributions might have been misused. She advised me to keep doing my job well. She told me to keep gathering facts. She told me not to confront Evelyn directly about the deeper issues yet. She also asked a question that stuck with me. She asked what I wanted if the organization turned out to be compromised at the top. I thought about the students whose files sat in my office, the blue folders with their essays and transcripts, the photos of them holding scholarship certificates. I told her that I wanted the mission to survive, with or without Evelyn. Lauren nodded. She said that was exactly the kind of answer a judge would like to hear if things reached that point. The months that followed felt like standing on a fault line and pretending not to feel the tremors. On the surface, life at Brightbridge looked better than ever. We landed a major grant from a tech foundation. Our social media numbers exploded under Tara's direction. A video of one of our students reading her acceptance letter went viral. The board chair sent group emails filled with praise. Inside the office, tension thickened. Evelyn began to shut me out of conversations that touched on finances. She moved donor strategy meetings to times when I was scheduled to be on campus with students. She sent Tara as the Brightbridge representative to events I had organized for years. One afternoon, she called me into her glass-walled office. She gestured for me to sit. She pushed a stack of quarterly reports across her desk. She told me that there had been questions about our scholarship reserves. She said that the board wanted to see stronger controls. Then she asked me to sign off on a statement that said every disbursement in the prior year had followed internal policy and donor intent. Pinned to the top of the stack was a cover sheet already bearing her signature. I read the statement twice. My throat felt dry. I thought about the payments I had flagged in my private files. I thought about the consulting firm with no clear deliverables. I thought about the travel to resorts that had never appeared on our official calendar. I told her that I would be happy to sign once I had time to review every disbursement in detail. Her expression cooled by a few degrees. She said that she had expected me to trust her oversight. She reminded me of how long we had worked together. She hinted that the board might see my hesitation as a lack of alignment. I repeated that I would not sign anything I could not honestly stand behind. The meeting ended with a brittle smile and a comment about how she hoped I would not make things harder than they needed to be. That evening, I sent Lauren a summary of the exchange. I attached a scanned copy of the unsigned statement. Lauren responded within an hour. She told me that my refusal had been critical. She also told me that Evelyn's behavior fit a common pattern. Someone at the top was preparing a scapegoat. From that point on, I lived in two parallel worlds. In one world, I returned calls from anxious parents and met with high school counselors. I reviewed essays and transcripts. I cheered when one of our students called to say that she had been accepted to a dream school. I sat on gym bleachers and handed out scholarships while proud families clapped. In the other world, I documented every step Evelyn took. I saved copies of messages where she directed staff to label luxury hotel charges as outreach events. I printed travel itineraries that did not match official schedules. I kept notes on conversations where she talked about donors who would not notice if their restricted gifts were used flexibly. I also started to notice Tara in a new light. She was still fresh and enthusiastic, but there were faint lines of worry around her eyes when financial topics came up. She stopped posting certain behind-the-scenes clips after I gently reminded her about confidentiality. She once started to say something about the new consulting firm, then cut herself off and looked around the open office space as if it were bugged. One evening, as I packed up my laptop, Tara approached my desk. She asked if I had a minute. We stepped into an empty conference room. She closed the door. Her hands shook as she sat down. She told me that she had been asked to draft a communications plan about an anticipated media narrative, a narrative that blamed me for administrative errors and sloppy oversight. The draft included language about a veteran staff member who had struggled to keep up with the pace of growth. It implied that I had resisted modernization. Tara swallowed hard as she spoke. She kept saying that she had not wanted to show me, but that she could not sit with it alone. She slid a printed copy of the draft across the table. My name did not appear, but it did not need to. Anyone who knew the organization would recognize me in those paragraphs. My hands did not shake as I read it. Something inside me had already detached from the illusion that Evelyn would ever protect me. I thanked Tara. I told her that I appreciated her honesty. I asked if she had kept any emails or messages where Evelyn had instructed her about the narrative. She nodded, eyes wide, as if realizing something important for the first time. I did not pressure her to do anything with those messages right away. I knew she was young and afraid of losing her job. I simply told her that she should keep them safe. Then I forwarded the communications plan to Lauren from my personal email. A week later, Lauren connected me with an investigator at the State Attorney General's office. He specialized in charitable organizations. We spoke in his office, where framed degrees lined the walls and stacks of case files sat on a side table. I walked him through years of Brightbridge history. I showed him the patterns in our financial data. I handed over a flash drive with redacted reports and email threads. I stressed that I wanted students and honest staff to be protected. He listened without interrupting. Then he told me that he would open a preliminary inquiry. He could not promise when or how it would unfold. These things took time. I thanked him and went back to work. I did not resign. I did not confront Evelyn with accusations. I kept doing my job. I watched. I waited. 2 months later, the tech foundation that had given us the large grant requested a formal impact review before renewing their support. They asked for an external firm to conduct the audit. They also asked for input from staff at multiple levels. They copied me on the request. Evelyn replied with outward warmth and enthusiasm. She wrote that transparency was a core value at Brightbridge. She suggested a firm with a polished website and thin experience. The foundation politely declined and insisted on hiring their own auditors. That was the knife Evelyn did not see coming. I had recommended those donors seek external assurances. Quietly, in a short conversation after an event, I had not disparaged anyone. I had simply told them that independent reviews often reassured nervous boards. They had listened. The audit would begin 2 weeks after the gala. Evelyn did not seem concerned. She believed she could charm auditors the same way she charmed donors. She believed that if they wanted staff input, she could direct who spoke to them. The only thing she had to do first, from her perspective, was get rid of the one person who knew where every body was buried. Me. The night of the gala arrived with summer heat that wrapped the city like a damp blanket. By 6 in the evening, the ballroom at Lakeview Harbor was ready. Our students stood at the entrance in borrowed suits and simple dresses, ready to greet donors. Tall banners displayed our logo beside photos of college campuses. The stage backdrop showed a collage of smiling faces, each one a scholarship recipient. I had triple-checked the run of show. I had rehearsed the student speakers. I had reviewed seating charts to avoid awkward collisions between ex-spouses and rival business partners. This was my favorite part of my work, the visible celebration of what our students had achieved. At 7 sharp, the doors opened, donors flowed in, the noise level rose. I moved through the crowd, adjusting tiny details, a slightly crooked table number, a forgotten place card, a nervous student who needed a final pep talk. At 7:15, my phone vibrated with Evelyn's termination email. After the first shock ebbed, a strange calm settled over me. It felt like the moment before a storm breaks, when the air presses down and birds go silent. I checked the time. The program would begin in 15 minutes. Evelyn was scheduled to welcome guests from the podium. I was scheduled to introduce a student panel later in the evening. I knew that if I made a scene now, she would have the story she had prepared. The story of the unstable, long-term staff member who could not handle change. The story Tara had drafted about resistance and outdated thinking. So I smiled. I kept moving. I spoke with donors about students and success stories. I did my job. 8 minutes before the program, I stepped into a side corridor and pulled out my phone. My fingers moved with automatic precision as I forwarded the termination email to Lauren. I added a short sentence. It happened at the gala. Then I forwarded the email to the investigator at the Attorney General's office. I wrote that my employment had been terminated shortly before the scheduled audit and that I remained ready to cooperate fully. I took one more step. I forwarded the email to a person whose name Evelyn often spoke with reverence. Her name was Ruth Williams. She was the founder of the tech foundation that had become our largest donor. She had grown up in public housing on the South Side and built a software company from scratch. She understood what access to education could do for a life. She had cried on stage 2 years earlier when one of our students told a story that sounded like her own. Ruth had given my personal number to one of her assistants and told me to reach out anytime our students needed something special. I had done that twice. Each time, she had responded quickly and generously. Now I sent her the email from Evelyn with a simple question. I wrote that I was being asked to leave quietly for the good of the organization. Then I asked if she would be willing to speak with me privately before making any decisions about future support. I put my phone away and returned to the ballroom. Evelyn took the stage to applause. She spoke about opportunity and resilience. She told stories about the students standing on the edge of possibility. Her voice carried effortlessly. The board chair smiled proudly behind her. Tara stood off to one side, filming a few seconds for social media, then lowering her phone with a conflicted look. At one point, Evelyn gestured toward me. She thanked me for my years of dedicated service. She said I was the quiet engine that kept things running. Donors turned to smile at me. I forced my face into a pleasant shape. She had already pressed the blade into my back. Now she wanted everyone to see her hand on my shoulder. During the salad course, my phone vibrated again. I glanced at it under the table. Ruth had replied. She wrote that she was in town and that she was actually in the ballroom, seated near the back with one of her senior program officers. I realized that she had entered while I was backstage with a student. Her name appeared on the donor list, but she attended events like this quietly, without fanfare. She wrote that she had read the termination email twice. She asked me to step into the hotel's small business center near the lobby in 10 minutes. My pulse began to race. I sipped water to steady my hands. I asked one of our volunteers to watch the student table for a moment, then I walked out. The business center was a glass-walled room with 2 computers and a printer. Ruth sat at one of the chairs, still wearing the simple black dress she had chosen for the gala. Her program officer, a tall woman with braided hair and focused eyes, sat beside her. Ruth stood when she saw me. She pulled me into a brief hug. She smelled faintly of citrus and coffee. She told me that she had read Evelyn's email with deep concern. She said that she had never known a competent leader to fire their head of programs by email in the middle of a gala. She asked me to explain what was really happening. The words poured out of me in calm, measured sentences. I told her about the discrepancies in our accounts. I described the attempts to push me to sign blanket assurances. I mentioned the preliminary inquiry at the Attorney General's office without giving details that would compromise it. I told her about the communications plan that cast me as the problem. I did not rant. I did not attack Evelyn's character. I focused on facts and patterns. Years in nonprofit work had taught me that donors respected clarity more than drama. Ruth listened without interrupting. Her program officer asked a few pointed questions about controls and documentation. I answered each one. When I mentioned the upcoming independent audit, the program officer's eyes sharpened. Ruth finally sat back. She folded her hands. She said that she had 2 priorities. She wanted her foundation's money to be used properly. She also wanted Brightbridge's students to be protected, regardless of who ran the show. Then she told me something that changed everything. She said that her foundation had been considering a new initiative. They wanted to build a direct scholarship program for first-generation students in cities across the country. They had been looking for someone with on-the-ground experience to lead it. She had already thought about me, even before the strange termination email. She said that if the situation at Brightbridge continued to deteriorate, she would rather partner with someone she trusted than pour more money into an organization with questionable leadership. My throat tightened. I felt the floor tilt an inch. Ruth said that for now, she would keep her thoughts private. She would wait for the outcome of the audit. She would not attend any closed meetings with Evelyn without her general counsel present. She would also arrange for the auditors to interview me and frontline staff directly, without Evelyn in the room. Then she looked me in the eye. She told me to go back into the ballroom, finish the night with grace, and trust that preparation beats theatrics in the long run. I walked back to the gala feeling like I was carrying two lives at once. The one Evelyn thought she had ended, and the one that was just beginning. 2 weeks after the gala, I sat at my kitchen table with a mug of coffee that had gone cold. A stack of papers lay in front of me. I no longer had a desk at the office. My severance agreement sat unread in my inbox. I was officially unemployed. Evelyn had followed her email with a short meeting in Human Resources on the Monday after the gala. She had kept her voice soft. She had said she was heartbroken over the irregularities in the program's budget. She had said that the board could not risk donor trust. She had framed the termination as an unfortunate necessity. I had said little. I had signed nothing. I had taken my box of personal items, carried them to my car, and driven home. In the days that followed, rumors spread through the staff. Some people messaged me from their personal accounts. Others were too scared. Tara sent a single line. She wrote that she was sorry and that she could not say more yet. The auditors from the Tech Foundation arrived at Brightbridge the following week. They requested financial records, policies, and internal communications. They scheduled confidential interviews with staff at all levels. They requested a meeting with me in their downtown office. Evelyn could not prevent it. She did not even know about it. I met with them for 3 hours. I brought printed materials and digital drives prepared with Lauren's help. I walked them through timelines and decision points. I pointed out places where numbers changed without clear explanations. They asked sharp questions. They were not easily impressed. That reassured me. A few days later, the state investigator called. He thanked me for my patience. He informed me that based on my documentation and information gathered from other sources, his office had opened a formal investigation into Brightbridge's use of restricted funds. He could not share specifics. He did tell me to keep my records safe and to expect further contact. 2 more weeks passed. I took long walks along the lake to keep from climbing the walls. I baked for neighbors. I cleaned closets. I read novels for the first time in months. I also met with Lauren to discuss my next steps if I never returned to Brightbridge. On a humid Thursday afternoon, my phone rang with a number I did not recognize. I answered. It was the chair of the Brightbridge board. His voice held a carefully neutral tone. He said that the auditors had completed their review. He said that serious concerns had emerged about certain financial decisions at the executive level. He said that the board had placed Evelyn on administrative leave, pending the outcome of both the audit and the state investigation. He also requested that I attend an emergency board meeting the following Monday as an invited guest. After the call, I sat at my kitchen table in silence. The mug of coffee beside me was stone cold. On Monday, I wore a navy suit that I had once reserved for donor presentations. I walked into the familiar conference room with its glass walls and framed photos of students. The table was crowded with board members, legal counsel, and a representative from the Tech Foundation. Ruth sat near the end, expression unreadable. Evelyn sat across from me. She looked smaller than I remembered. The sharp lines of her tailored dress could not hide the tightness around her mouth. She did not greet me. The board chair opened the meeting. He summarized the auditor's findings. They had discovered a pattern of reclassifying personal and luxury travel as donor cultivation. They had found payments to that mysterious consulting firm, which turned out to be owned by Evelyn's cousin. The firm had no meaningful deliverables. They had confirmed that restricted scholarship funds had been used to cover general operating shortfalls during a period when Evelyn wanted to avoid reporting a deficit. Most damning of all, they had found email threads where Evelyn directed staff to reroute expenses and to keep certain information off the books until after major donor renewals. I watched the color drain from Evelyn's face as each detail emerged. The board's legal counsel then outlined the potential consequences. The organization could face penalties, donors could demand refunds, public trust could collapse. The chair turned to me. He asked if I had anything to add. I spoke calmly. I described my attempts to raise concerns. I confirmed that I had refused to sign blanket assurances. I mentioned that I had contacted counsel when internal efforts failed. I emphasized that my goal had always been to protect students and the mission. I did not gloat. I did not raise my voice. I simply told the truth. Evelyn finally spoke. She said that everyone at the table knew how hard it was to lead a growing nonprofit. She said that decisions had to be made quickly. She said that lines were sometimes blurry. She insisted that she had only ever acted in service of the organization. She implied that I had overreacted. She suggested that I had been bitter about losing influence. Then she made a mistake. She accused me of sabotaging her. She claimed that my communication with donors had endangered funding. She said that I had misrepresented her motives. She said that my documentation had taken things out of context. Ruth leaned forward. Her eyes were flint. She asked Evelyn if firing her head of programs by email during a gala was also an act of service to the mission. The room went very still. The board chair cleared his throat. He said that based on the evidence, the board had voted to remove Evelyn as chief executive officer, effective immediately. He said that the board would cooperate fully with the ongoing investigation. He said that they would appoint an interim leader while they considered long-term options. He then turned to me with a look I had never seen on his face before, respect mixed with regret. He thanked me for my years of service and for my integrity. He admitted that the board had relied too heavily on Evelyn's charisma and not enough on structural oversight. He said that if I ever wished to return to Brightbridge in a leadership role, they would be open to the conversation. Before I could respond, Ruth raised a hand. She said that she also had an announcement. She told the board that her foundation would pause all new funding to Brightbridge until the organization completed a full restructuring and compliance plan acceptable to her legal team. She did not say the word punishment. She did not need to. Then she turned to me. She said that her foundation had decided to move forward with the nationwide scholarship initiative we had discussed. She said that they needed a leader who understood both the heart and the mechanics of this work. She said that they had decided to offer the position to me. The room seemed to tilt again. My ears rang softly. She described the role in broad strokes. I would build a program from the ground up. I would hire a team. I would design systems to keep funds safe and transparent. I would work with partners in multiple cities. She stated that they would include specific provisions in the grant agreements to support current Brightbridge students. Even as the organization restructured, no student would lose funding because of leadership failures. It took me a moment to find my voice. When I did, I said that I was honored. I asked if we could ensure that Brightbridge students remained protected during any transition. Ruth nodded. Her program officer had already drafted language with that priority. Evelyn stared at me with a mixture of disbelief and fury. She had believed that firing me would erase me from the narrative. Instead, my preparation had turned her weapon back on her. I did not look away. The board chair ended the meeting with a quiet statement. He said that this was not the story he had wanted for Brightbridge. He also said that sometimes organizations needed to crack open in order to rebuild honestly. When I walked out of that conference room, the river below the windows sparkled in the afternoon sun. I passed staff in the hallway who looked at me with curiosity and hope. Tara stood near the copy room, clutching a stack of papers. Our eyes met. She stepped toward me. Her voice shook as she said that she had spoken with the auditors, too. She had turned over the communications plan and the emails where Evelyn had told her to craft a narrative that blamed me. She said that she was sorry for not coming forward sooner. I told her that courage rarely arrived on schedule. I thanked her for showing up when it mattered. Then I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby. For the first time in months, my chest felt light. 6 months later, I stood on a different stage in a different hotel ballroom. The logo behind me did not belong to Brightbridge. It belonged to the new program Ruth's foundation had created. We called it First Light Scholars. We had launched in 3 cities already: Chicago, Detroit, Atlanta. Each city had its own advisory board, made up of educators, community leaders, and former scholarship recipients. We had built systems with Lauren's input and with the auditor's guidance. Every dollar had a clear path from donor to student. Every report was written in language that parents could understand. The work felt familiar and new at the same time. Some former Brightbridge staff had joined me. Our old finance associate now led compliance and reporting. One of our student coordinators ran outreach on the south side. Tara eventually left Brightbridge as well. She joined a communications agency that specialized in social impact work. We still met for coffee sometimes. She was kinder to herself than she had been in those chaotic weeks. Brightbridge itself had survived, though it looked very different. The board had hired an interim director with a background in nonprofit turnarounds. They had negotiated a settlement with the state. Evelyn had resigned in exchange for reduced penalties, though certain matters remained open. Rumors said that she had moved to a smaller city to consult quietly. I sometimes saw her name appear in industry newsletters, attached to cautious statements about ethics. I did not read those pieces closely. People often asked me if I felt vindicated. The truth was complicated. Yes. There were moments of deep satisfaction. Moments when donors told me that they trusted me because I had refused to sign that false statement. Moments when students introduced me to their younger siblings and said that they were next in line. Moments when I saw my name on an organizational chart as an executive director and remembered the day my boss had tried to reduce me to a footnote. Yet the deeper feeling was quieter. I felt relief. Relief that the mission had survived the ego of one leader. Relief that students had not lost their scholarships. Relief that I had listened to the small voice inside me that said something was wrong, and that I had acted on it instead of swallowing it for the sake of comfort. On the stage that night, I looked out at a room full of people. Some of them were donors, some were mentors, many were students. The string lights hung from the ceiling. A young pianist played softly in a corner. I told them a story. I did not use names or organizational labels. I simply spoke about a woman who had worked hard for a mission she loved. I described how easy it was to confuse loyalty to a leader with loyalty to a cause. I talked about the day she realized those two things were no longer the same. I told them that sometimes protecting a mission meant standing up to the person in charge. I talked about documentation and patience and quiet preparation. I explained that courage did not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looked like exporting one more report after hours. Sometimes it looked like saying no to a signature. Sometimes it looked like leaving an office with a cardboard box and no guarantee of what came next. I finished with a simple truth. I said that people will underestimate you if you are quiet and diligent. They will call your caution weakness and your ethics stubbornness. They will assume that you will never walk away because they have grown used to leaning on you. Then I told the students in the room that those same qualities can become their greatest armor. That a clear conscience and a paper trail can carry more power than any title after the event. A first-year student approached me. She wore a simple dress and shoes that had clearly walked a long way. She told me that she had stood up to a teacher who had been inappropriate with her friend. The administration had tried to ignore her at first. She had written down dates and times. She had gathered messages. She had persisted. She said that listening to my story made her feel less alone. I thought back to the night of the Brightbridge Gala, the moment when my phone lit up with the termination email, the way my world had seemed to tilt, the way I had forced myself to breathe and to move and to trust the work I had done in the dark. If Evelyn had never tried to cut me out, I might never have left. I might have stayed in a slowly rotting structure out of habit and fear. I might have defended her to myself until there was nothing left to defend. Instead, her betrayal pushed me into a wider life. I walked home from the First Light event under a clear Chicago sky. The lake wind cut through my jacket, sharp and clean. Streetlights cast long shadows on the sidewalk. My phone buzzed once in my pocket. It was a photo from one of our scholars. She stood in front of a campus library, holding a stack of textbooks almost as tall as her torso. Her smile nearly split her face. My legs ached from hours in heels. My voice felt rough from speaking. My heart felt full. I thought about everything I had lost: the title, the office, the sense of safety that comes from believing that loyalty will be returned in equal measure. Then, I thought about what I had gained: a new mission that aligned with my values, a team built on mutual respect, a partner in Ruth who valued diligence over charm, a hard-earned understanding that preparation is a form of power. Most of all, I had gained myself. The quiet woman who noticed when numbers did not add up. The woman who refused to sign a false promise. The woman who walked into a boardroom full of powerful people and told the truth without flinching. That woman had always been there. Evelyn had tried to use my loyalty as a weapon against me. She had believed that my devotion to the mission would keep me obedient. She had read my calm as complacency. She had been wrong. In the end, she wrote her own downfall in the emails she thought no one would ever read. In the flights she charged to accounts meant for students. In the stories she asked a frightened young communications director to craft. All I had done was keep the receipts. As I turned the corner toward my apartment, the wind picked up. I pulled my coat tighter and smiled into the dark. My old life at Brightbridge had ended in the bright glare of a gala ballroom. My new life had begun in the quiet space between an email and a decision. And for the first time in a long time, I felt completely, solidly, unmistakably free.